things here. Thank you very much. I was just about to do that myself. Excellent. I love great co-hosts and colleagues. We are going to get started with this. And so that was always going to be my first thing to say is start that recording. The chat is there. We love a good chat. So if at any point in time, there's a moment where you would like to ask a question, have us go into further detail, we are going to be leveraging breakout rooms for a little bit more intimate space. It's going to be choose your own breakout room, if you will, depending on what you came here for today. So you might be already in PlayPosit and halfway through your presentation. You might say, I really need help just getting in there. We can do all the things today. You might just be seeking some design support. So we will talk a little bit about that. We are going to start off with just some shared thinking and shared language. So as we go into those spaces that across the room, collectively here, we have a sense of some of the things that we're going to really encourage each and every one of you to think about. Otherwise, remain on mute. We'll go ahead and help mute you if something does happen in the background. You can't make your way to that mute button on time. You can let us know if you have a question. We will be monitoring both the chat and the reactions hands. So if you want to go to your reactions on the Zoom meetings control bar and raise your hand, that will let us know you have something you'd like to share. As well as, of course, there is live closed captioning, and that is already enabled. So you should be able to utilize that service. All right, there's a group of us here today to support you, myself and my colleagues, Katie Five-Schuster, Jill Garrity, Angela Gibson. We're going to be serving different roles and in different breakout rooms for you today, but collectively, if you see these faces, this is the team here to support you today. All right, so I'm going to be leading just this first section. We're going to be covering a little bit about goals and outcomes. We're going to be talking a little bit about planning for engagement, strategies for engagement, have a very quick moment for Q&A, and then break out into some design time. So this will be a very quick, as I said, it's just it's not a teaser per se, but some grounding and just some anchoring for us before we dive into those breakout rooms. All right, so first and foremost, when we think about goals and outcomes, this is going to be one of our major recommendations. So regardless of the room you're in, regardless of the stage in the process, we are going to recommend that you genuinely plan for engagement. And by doing so, first and foremost, think about your goals and outcomes. So these might be really rudimentary for some of you. For some of you might say, you know what, this is great. And I've never actually taken up the opportunity to answer these two questions. If you have never done it, if you come into my room, I will certainly say, how can I help you? And you're going to say, well, I really want to do this thing. And I'm ultimately going to say, well, why? Why do you want to do that thing? What are you hoping to accomplish? What are you hoping to get out of it? What are you hoping the experience is for your attendees? Because ultimately, we want to make sure we're designing with these things in mind. So the first question I'm going to encourage each and every one of you to really sit with genuinely and think about is what are you as a presenter or as a presenter group hoping to get out of the session? I want to sit and acknowledge the fact that as presenters, we might have really different outcomes than our audience does. Perhaps, for instance, I'm embarking on a research project and I really want feedback. Well, that's a goal of mine personally. I'm seeking really intentional feedback from folks. Your audience in that, on the back end of that one example, might not have been coming to your session to give feedback. Instead, maybe they came to really engage with your data. They're hoping to use that data. They're hoping to be inspired by your research model, right? They're going to have very different goals and outcomes. But nevertheless, it is important for you to sit and think about what do I want to accomplish or what do we want to accomplish at the back end of this session. If you're looking for future collaborators, there's a way to do that. If you're looking to amplify someone else's work or your own work, there's a way to do that, right? You can promote and encourage or ask even folks to promote the session if they went to it on social media, for instance. You can provide recommendations as to how to do that. So sitting with this is going to be really fundamental for helping to realize your own goals and your own outcomes throughout the session. Likewise, sitting and thinking about your projected audience. We don't know who all is ultimately going to be coming to the session, but we can imagine the types of folks that might be. And by virtue of doing so, also sit with this question of what do I'm hoping that they get out of it? Do I want them to think a certain way, feel a certain way, experience certain things, leave with certain content? Sitting with this, I promise you, if you have not done so already, is going to be core to your experience and making sure that as you design and PlayPosit, you're designing what you want to, but also not too much, right? These are going to be some of our recommendations for also making PlayPosit seem less daunting or preparing a session like this seem less daunting. I know myself as a designer, I tend to get sometimes lost in the possibilities. I love creative design. And so when I see something, I'm like, oh, I could do this and this and this and this. And in stepping back and thinking about all the things I might want to do, that big picture can seem like it's a lot. But if I ultimately focus on my goals and outcomes, it helps me to narrow in scope, helps me really make sure that I'm aligning everything throughout my presentation to those main goals and those main outcomes. So again, this might be very fundamental, but more often than not, when we get into conversations with presenters haven't necessarily thought about the answers to these two questions yet. So I'm really going to encourage you to think about that today with us. And no worries, if you're like, I don't know yet, we can actually help to tease that out as well, right? All right, next, at least anchor point in planning for engagement. There's a few ways you can do this. There are a series of questions I've left you here that I'm just gonna read out and talk around just for a second. But as you think about those goals and outcomes, one of the things that we're gonna encourage you to think about is what are those opportunities for aligning your session goals and outcomes to the actual model of how you actually present those. So I like to use the word meta moments. But there might be a moment at which during your presentation, you've done something or asked your audience members to do something. That's a really good opportunity to actually step back, use what I would refer to personally as a call out, or in PlayPosit, you could imagine a pause interaction and say, hey, did you see what I did there? I just want to draw attention to this. That can be a really powerful move as a presenter. And by virtue of doing so, you're not just providing a moment of reflection, which is going to be cool, but in that same moment, also reflecting on how you're modeling the very thing you're talking about. So let's imagine, for instance, you were talking about setting up community guidelines, and you had already set up community guidelines. So by the time you get to that point, you can say, hey, I'm going to pause here for a second and give you an opportunity to see this call out, right? And it's hey, did you see what I did here? I asked this very question of you all, and it's the same thing I'm going to recommend for you. So I could take a second to say, hey, when I talk about table of contents, we had an agenda at the beginning of this session slide. It's those types of moves, which are going to be really powerful to step back and demonstrate through practice, through the experience, what these presenters are what these audience members are ultimately experiencing. Remember, at the end of the day, that these are going to be educators, leaders, administrators. There might be students in the audience. And so in thinking about why are they ultimately at your session and what are they looking for? And so these call outs can be really crucial moments to say, hey, so if you came here for research data, I'm going to do an intentional call out because here's your moment. This is for you right here, right now. So we'll be talking about that a little bit, but try to model and try to actually pull out and call attention to the very things you're doing throughout your practice. Transparency is key and can be really helpful for a really strong narrative and message. There's also going to be 3 points of engagement that I'm going to recommend you really think about. That's connecting your audience to content, connecting your audience to each other, and connecting audience to you all as a presenter group. And so when we're thinking about just presenting content, right, a very, very easy way to get started. And if you had nothing else, we do realize, of course, that we transitioned to PlayPosit. So for those of you who had familiarity with our previous system, this is a shift. And for you, those of you just hopping in, you of course did submit your session proposals before you knew exactly that we're using PlayPosit and the structure therein. So at a very minimal model, you need a video of your session recording. But beyond that, thinking about these 3 questions will help you think about where do I get started for engagement. So if I have, for instance, a slide up on my presentation and it's just bullet points or perhaps data, that's going to be a really crucial moment for me to think about, all right, well, if I created an opportunity for audience members to actually engage with this data, engage with this content, what might that look like? That could be feedback. That could be them leaving additional thoughts or additional ideas, for instance, via a discussion interaction. There could be a number of things. But creating ways for them to actually engage with the content itself is a major anchoring point for engagement. In addition, right, we can use those same moments to have folks build community, start to share ideas, by engaging with each other. So I'm going to encourage you all to think about that as a major anchoring point. And then finally, getting to connect with you all. You all are all fantastic folks that bring a lot to the table. And so not neglecting the fact that you're a big part of this picture and that it's about you as well, right? And so seeking out additional ways for them to connect with you, sharing along the way your own personal stories, journeys, your examples, leaving your bio. Those are small ways for them to further connect with you long-term, as well as in the moment of engaging with this presentation. So if you haven't thought about engagement yet, these are, at least for me, major cornerstones of that process. All right. Now, before we dive into the question period, just to see if anyone has some initial questions and then move into our breakout rooms, wanted to really get you all to think about the fact that you have a unique challenge. You're attending to, of course, not only the here and now. So while we're virtual and while we're on site, we'll be asking folks to engage in your sessions. But there are also going to be this opportunity for folks to engage long-term. And in fact, we are intentionally planning ways that we, if you will, revive your sessions. So there'll be moments where we ask folks to engage. We already know institutional teams are planning post-conference experiences. So how do you make it such that when we're 3 months out, 6 months out, regardless of the time that folks actually engage with your session, that they're feeling like they're welcomed into that space, that this is for them, that in a sense that this is not devoid of time, right? But that it can live on for the year that it's going to be available. We've had some really great questions in our last session about this is, well, what's the responsibility on me to tend to that space? And we can certainly continue that conversation today. But you can have this be fully asynchronous, but nevertheless inclusive, regardless of time and regardless of when they access your session. So that's going to be an interesting challenge, right? That you are speaking to a recorded audience. And if you have not done this before, it certainly can be a design challenge in thinking about how do I do that effectively and how do I do that so it's not just me talking at someone for 15 to 20 minutes. So a couple of the ways that we're going to talk about today, at least some core concepts, is actually identifying and making transparent intentional pathways. PlayPosit does afford you the opportunity. This relates to this third one, to actually increase agency and empower users and audience members to explore your session in the way that makes sense for them. So if you watch, for instance, the Getting Started playlist, I leveraged the table of contents to that very end, right? I wanted to make a space for you all to explore that content in the way that was meaningful to you, right? And the table of contents was a really easy interaction type for me to be able to do that. You could name, and at the very beginning say, hey, if you are a student, I've mapped out this content for you, right? You can, of course, watch the whole session, but if you want to jump right to student testimonials and or engage in the following ways, I've designed this whole part of my presentation just for you. If you're a leader and you want to hop to this content, you could do that. So you could map out, regardless of perhaps what they're looking for, who they are, and the types of roles that they take, the type of content that you've made available, you name it. You can actually identify those pathways ahead of time to help folks orient to your session and know what they're in for. Likewise, I already did mention call outs and pause points. It's absolutely okay, and in fact recommended for this session type, that as you record, as you prepare, that you plan out, when do I pause? When do I make space for comments? When do I do that? And for those of you already in PlayPosit, you might have learned this already, right? But if you do not take a second to actually pause in your recording, it's going to be actually hard to figure out where to make an interaction. So some of those recommendations we're going to talk around today. If you have not yet recorded, and if you have, we can talk about best strategies for when and where to add interactions. But having some of those call outs and pause points are going to be really helpful and affording the time for it to not just play in the background, right, but engage folks in that way as well. The last thing is, this is, of course, an opportunity for shared knowledge, for shared understanding, for collaboration. You, of course, do need to set up those spaces. So as we think about what's possible with these, we recognize that with everyone's capacity, that having just a video of you talking is baseline, right? Having that up there in your presentation there is a very much baseline. But today, our goal is to explore with you all the possibilities of PlayPosit, so that these sessions are ultimately not sit and get, but rather something that can be unique, where we're leveraging the unique affordances of asynchronous engagement in particular with a tool like PlayPosit. Okay, so that's our goal today, is make that space for you. We, of course, have tons of resources, and this slide is just there for anyone that needs additional links or is accessing any of our previous webinars, you name it. But otherwise, I'm going to stop screen sharing because there's a few things that we're going to dive into here as we move into breakout rooms. But do we have any questions right off before we shift? And I did see folks following along. Yes, Jane, go ahead.
I recorded in with a tool I have myself and uploaded it to YouTube and revisited all the captions and corrected them all. And when I did PlayPosit, I asked it to include those particular captions in YouTube. But when I do the review, I don't see closed caption. Is that normal or is something askew?
That is a good question. I'm gonna ask that we hold that for a particular breakout room, Jane. And if we can't troubleshoot it live, then we have PlayPosit direct support and we'll be able to connect with them to answer that specifically. Yeah, that's a great question though. So we'll make sure to make note of that one. Any other questions, at least initially? I'll tell you heads up. So the 3 rooms we're gonna make right now, there's gonna be 3. There's a, hey, I haven't gotten into PlayPosit yet, or I've gotten into PlayPosit, but I haven't done anything yet. So I'm very much looking for a getting started, right? And so that's going to be 1 room combined. So we'll take a little bit of time just reorienting folks how to get into their presentation space. And then once they're there, some of the very basic fundamentals of PlayPosit design. We're going to have a 2nd room, which is, hey, you know what? I'm in PlayPosit and I presented a lot, but you know what I'd really like is a conversation about what it's like to reimagine with the asynchronous in mind. So a little bit more conceptual, but we'll have a room that is very much focused on that. And then there's going to be a 3rd room, which is, hey, I've been in PlayPosit and I get the basics, but I'm really looking for some discussion of some of the more nuanced tips and tricks. So we're calling that I think it's PlayPosit 201, but it's sort of the next steps in PlayPosit. So it goes beyond we're hoping if you will go to that room, you can of course be in there even if you haven't gotten into your session and haven't started to play, but that would very much be the space for, hey, can you take a look at this thing I created? Do you think it flows right? Do you have a better recommendation based on your expertise? So that is really much going to be, we're diving into some of the more hidden quirks of PlayPosit and some of the deeper recommendations. All right. Okay, any other questions? If not, I'm going to review the chat as well as we shift. Angela, are we pretty close on those rooms?
I have them ready to launch.
All right.
I can open the rooms when you're ready.
All right, so this is going to be choose your own room. So really look at these 3 rooms, figure out what you're looking for, and we will see you in them.
Allison, thanks so much. And please do let us know if you have further questions.
Hey, Angela, I can't figure out how to get into my room. Can you throw me in there?
Yeah, I will assign, which you're doing.
I'm supposed to do the PlayPosit access one, but there are tons of people in there. I might need some additional support.
Okay.
I'm trying to get into the 3rd room and I clicked on it and nothing happened.
All right, so Jane, I will assign people. You're going to PlayPosit 201.
Yeah.
Jane, okay, I'm going to send you to 201. Who else did need help? I'm sorry.
And I don't have anything on my screen here to choose
Natasha.
from. Yeah,
okay. Hi. Which one would you like? PlayPosit 101, Reimagining Asynchronous, or PlayPosit 201?
101, please.
Yes, ma'am. Okay. Who else needs any help?
Hi, this is Kara McGillicuddy. Can you put me in the 201? For some reason, I'm just getting a blank box when I try and open the breakout rooms.
Sorry. Thank you, Kara. I'm sending you now. Thank you. Jill, would you like me to send you, or are you staying in the main room?
Maddie asked me to stay in the main room.
Okay, so great. I will not assign you. Martina, do you need assigning, or are you going to hang out with Jill? All right, I'm going to go ahead and join my group, which is the Reimagining Asynchronous. So if you need me, let me know. Thanks.
Okay, I'll be here.
Thanks.
I just appeared here. Was that intentional?
Everyone's coming back, so you're in the right place.
Got it.
All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome back. So that it marks the top of the hour. I hope, I know we had a great conversation in my room, and I'm going to ask the three of you just to hang on tight for that one question that we talked about. But anything else, I hope we were able to either get folks in to PlayPosit that needed it, talk about some of our favorite tips and tricks along the way, do some demoing. There's always more that we can do, of course, and that getting started playlist, there's a lot in there. And I do walkthroughs, I do demos, and you name it. So hopefully this was helpful. If you have any remaining questions, please feel free to stay in the room. We do have a little bit more time. So we're here for you. But otherwise, we will move to stop the recording and hope everyone has a great rest of their day.